everybody, welcome to the first vlog or video of 2022. I wanted to just take a minute and say thank you at the creation of this vlog. I officially have 91 subscribers. 91! Isn't that amazing? Thank you very much to the 91 for supporting my channel. I have a lot of fun doing these, and I hope you enjoy at least some of the videos I make. I look forward here to hopefully shortly breaking 100. Time will tell. But anyway, as you can see, Sancho and I are once again on an adventure, our first adventure of 2022. And today we're going to head to downtown Riverside. Now, downtown Riverside is about a mile square, and this is the city of Riverside in Riverside County. The historic district is about a mile square, and it was first settled in 1870 by this cat named John North and his colonist friends. Now, one of the first things that Mr. North and his colonists did was start planting some orange trees in about 1871. Now, shortly after that, this lady named Ilsa Tibbet in 1873, I believe, planted 2 Brazilian navel orange trees in the city of Riverside. And she got these trees from one of her friends at the Department of Agriculture in Washington, the District of Columbia, our nation's capital. Anyway, she planted these 2 trees, and needless to say, they took off. As many of you know, in the early days of Southern California, a lot of produce was grown here because of the abundant sunshine and quite frankly, zero weather. It's always 75, 85 degrees here. But Anaheim originally grew olives, I believe, and they grew oranges, which is the home of Disneyland. The city of Corona within this county of Riverside was famous for oranges. Temecula, which was once Rancho California, grew avocados. Anyway, a lot of produce has been grown here. So 1873, this lady plants the 2 Brazilian navel orange trees. And as I said, these took off. By 1882, over half a million orange trees were in the state of California, and 250,000, half of those trees, existed in the city of Riverside. In fact, in 1895, there was this Broad Street Index that listed the city of Riverside the richest city in America per capita. 1895. Now, obviously, 120 years later, that's not true. But back then, it was a very, very wealthy city. So I thought today we'd head down to the historic area. There's some beautiful buildings. I'd like to take a moment and sort of just show you and walk around. It's going to be a nice day, and I'm very glad you're tagging along. So our first stop on our historic downtown tour is the Mission Inn. Now, the Mission Inn was actually built in several phases between 1902 and 1932. And the guy that commissioned this to be built was a cat named Frank Miller. And the inn, the whole purpose of the inn, quite frankly, was just to provide a showcase for his artwork and some other items that he collected over the years in all his travels. He actually hired several architects whose names you'll hear several times during the course of this video. A guy named Arthur Benton, Myron Hunt, Stan Wilson, and Peter Weber. Now, the inn's name came from the design, which quite frankly was just based on Southern California's Spanish heritage, and obviously all the missions that were built in the early and mid 1800s. This is actually listed on the National Register of Historical Places and is considered a historic landmark. And as you can see, it still has some of the decorations left over from Christmas and the holiday season. Here's the patio area of the Mission Inn. A buddy of mine, Gary Hawley, actually got married here many years ago. It is absolutely a beautiful place to spend some time. I highly recommend coming and visit if you're ever in town. So we're across the street and kind of give you a shot of the Mission Inn. Again, as I said, if you're ever bored and want to come down, maybe one day we'll go inside, but it's really, really a pretty building. I think it's pretty expensive to stay here, but there you go. So our second building on our historic tour is the Old City Hall. Now this was used from 1924 to 1975 as Riverside's first municipality owned building, and they used it at City Hall. Now note the Spanish Renaissance architecture again. In 1985 it was restored by somebody, and now it's just various office spaces. But we'll walk across the street here to get a closer look. 3612 Mission Inn Boulevard, the former city hall for the city. Again, now it's just all private offices. It looks like Tilden Coil Constructors is here. But just a beautiful building, again in the Spanish Renaissance style. So our third building is the Riverside Metropolitan Museum. This was built in 1912, and it was actually the first federal post office. In 1945, the city purchased it, and it became the police department and a small museum. And by 1966, the building became entirely a museum. Now, it is not Spanish. This is Italian Renaissance. We're going to walk across the street and try to get a closer look.
Here we go.
Front of the museum. I'm sorry to say, I'm sad to report, I actually have not been in this museum in probably 15 or 20 years. It's probably something I need to go and visit one day. But what a magnificent post office. You can actually still see just below the flag. I'm going to zoom in there. Some artwork there that says US PO. Oops, a little higher. US Post Office. Again, another side of the building. Quite frankly, a massive post office for 1912. How many letters could they actually process through this place? But pretty just the same. So our number 4 building is the first Congregational church, which was built or erected in 1913. And this is actually the third home of the oldest church congregation in the city of Riverside. Now the architect who built this was Myron Hunt. And again, this is obviously Spanish Renaissance again. And you'll note the beautiful tower. Well, the sun's probably blocking it, we'll come around. But Myron was instrumental in the Mission Inn that we talked about just a few moments ago. Ooh, there's a plaque. Let's see what the plaque says. Well, actually, plaques don't say anything, they read. Pretty much the same thing I said. So again, here's the first Congregational church. And there's that magnificent tower. Well, that's just really pretty and hard to believe it's been here since 1913. You know, 100 plus years. Very pretty church. So on to our next building. Next building, shocking but true, is another church. This is the Universalist Unitarian Church, built in 1891. And obviously this is Gothic Revival, and the architect was A.C. Willard. Not as pretty as the last church, but a church just the same. Can kind of see the stained glass windows. I'm sure they're much prettier on the inside than they are here on the outside. Looks like they've had to put some plexiglass over them to protect them from vandals or sun. It does have a pretty roof. And if you have a bow and arrow and you're a fan of Hawkeye, looks like they got a spot up there you can shoot passerbys with arrows. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a really pretty church. Yeah, I recant my previous statement. This is pretty cool. Pretty cool church. Again, for all you archers, there's a spot up there you could take folks out at random, Hawkeye fans, but it really is a pretty church. Yeah, it's got very beautiful doors. Again, the stained glass, I'm sure before they had to put the plexiglass, probably really made this place pop. Too bad we have to do those things, but we do. This is Mission Inn Boulevard and Lemon Street. So we're here at 3485 Mission Inn Boulevard. This is actually the Municipal Auditorium. The architects were Art Benton and Stan Wilson. A couple of the cats that built the Mission Inn. And this is actually a memorial. It was built as a memorial to Riverside's World War I veterans. It was built in 1929. We'll go across the street to get a better view here. So again, this is the Municipal Auditorium, building number 7 of our tour. Note those beautiful yellow and blue tiled spires. Again, this was built just as a memorial to the veterans of World War I from the city of Riverside. It is a beautiful building. A little less than a block from the Mission Inn, and as I previously mentioned, 2 of the Mission Inn architects erected this building. Let's zoom in on those spires. One there, and one just behind that palm tree. Really pretty building. So right next to the Municipal Auditorium is the Riverside Art Museum. Now this museum was actually built in 1929, and it was originally built for the YWCA, which, as you all know, stands for the Young Women's Christian Association. The architect was actually Julia Morgan. Now, Miss Morgan, she was part of the Hearst San Simeon estate. She helped Mr. Hearst build his castle. In 1966, the city of Riverside actually purchased this building and turned it into the museum that we know today. And I do not know where the YWCA ended up being housed, but what a pretty building. And again, this is another art museum I've not been in many, many years, and probably need to make a trip and visit. We're about to cross the street in just a moment and take a look at the Riverside Art Museum, the former home of the YWCA, the Young Women's Christians Association. It's a really, really pretty building. So this has been the local art museum, or the first art museum, since 1966. As I previously mentioned, this was once the home of the Young Women's Christian Association, the YWCA, here at 3425 Mission Inn Boulevard. number 9 on our tour is the Arlington Heights Citrus Exchange. It's now the Heroes Restaurant, a very good restaurant, by the way. But back in 1923, architect Stan Wilson, again the Mission Inn cat, he built this as the headquarters for the Sunkist Growers Inc. It is Spanish Revival, and we'll walk across the street here and take a look at it. Now, you all know what Sunkist is. They actually had a huge manufacturing facility in Corona for many, many years that is now a train station, I believe. But here at 3397, back in 1923, this restaurant was the headquarters for Sunkist growers. Isn't that amazing? I think they've done a good job trying to keep the spirit of the building anyway. And as I said, Heroes is actually a great restaurant and brewery. I've eaten here many, many times. Their chili, when I used to eat meat, it's awesome. And their tater tots are very good. You can't go wrong. Look, old farm equipment. Yard art. So we're going underneath the 91 freeway and we are approaching the Sunland, I believe it's called the Sunland Fruit Packing House. The Sunland Fruit Company Packing House. It was actually restored in 1990. I actually don't know when it was built, probably in the 1920s. We'll get across the street to take a closer look here in just a second. So we're heading into the Sunland Fruit Packing House company, their original building. Right here, this was built in the 1920s. Mission Revival style. It was restored, I believe, in 1990. And it is currently, I believe, just an office building for some company. But very, very pretty. Again, Mission Revival style. I do not know the architect, but it is at 3252 Mission Inn Avenue, just on the other side of the 91 freeway. Super nice building. So the old spaghetti factory was actually once the Union Pacific Railroad Depot. This was built in 1904, and again, it's a very obvious Mission Revival. This will share very similar architecture to San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake. As back in 1904, those were the railroads that kind of, I guess, the tracks. They ran back and forth between San Pedro, here in Riverside, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake. Restored and is now a spaghetti factory. So right across the street from the railroad depot, now spaghetti factory, is North Park. Now, North Park has been maintained by the city of Riverside since 1927. This was the original location of John North's home. As we mentioned previously, one of the founding members of the city of Riverside, with him and his colonists. And obviously they knocked his house down, or it fell down at some point, and they turned his property into a park. Again, right across the street from the old railroad depot, now home of the spaghetti factory. Pretty cool. So we're headed down Mission Inn Boulevard, coming up to Santa Fe Avenue, and this is home of the Santa Fe Railroad Depot, also built in 1924. It has long been restored and is now a realty office, but take a look at this. So this is obviously Spanish or Pueblo revival, but this was the Santa Fe Railroad Depot once upon a time, 100 years ago, basically. here, this is it's the former YMCA building, built in 1909 by architect Art Benton, and obviously this is Italian Renaissance, an old brick building. It is now the Life Arts Building, and it was converted, or the YMCA left the building in 1968, and it has been art studios ever since. So here is the front of the, former YMCA, now the Life Arts Building, where young struggling artists can get a booth and work at their craft. Again, built in 1909. So right here is the Aurora Vista Hotel. Stan Winston was the architect. It was built in 1927. It was built for Fred Stiebler. Fred was, he made a lot of money in the citrus packing equipment business. And again, as you can see, this is kind of Spanish, Moorish style. Kind of takes up this whole block, but very pretty. I do not know when it was restored. So here's a side of the Vista Hotel. Kind of a cool old door and some shutters. This is a historical landmark. Again, my hunch is it's all office building now. So the building you're about to see is known as the Arcade Building. It was built in 1928, the Security, Title, and Insurance Guarantee building. It is in the Spanish Renaissance. And it sort of complements the Bonnett building, which we'll see in just a moment. But take a look at those beautiful doors. I'm gonna go around the corner and show you some of the arches that make the building famous. So again, the Arcade Building, note the 9 archways. And again, this is now just a private office space, but once upon a time it was the Security, Title, Insurance Company on the corner here of University and Orange. Let's go find the Bonnett building. So right here at 3800, you can kind of see the arches. This is the Bonnett building from 1908. It was remodeled in 1929 for some street widening, but you can still see the complementary arches meant to match the Arcade Building. Again, private offices, looks like law offices for local attorneys. So building number 18 on our journey, this is known as the Jackson Building. This was a Japanese-owned, what was called a Washington restaurant between 1905 and 1942. It was actually operated by the Harada family, and the Harada family is actually famous for challenging California's 1913 alien land law, which prohibited property ownership by non-citizens. And once upon a time, after it was a restaurant, it was actually a bank, and now it's known as the Dragon Marsh. I really don't know what that is. But back in 1905 through 1942, it was a restaurant. Here in the heart of the city of Riverside, this is formerly Main Street, and they've sort of closed it off, at least this section, and they've turned it into a number of shops and just kind of a nice area to walk around, right next to the Mission Inn. Check out that amazing clock across the street. But what I want to talk about right now is the Loring Building, which you'll see right here. Now, this building was erected in 1890. It was the winter house, if you can believe it, the winter house of Charles Loring. He was part of the Riverside Fruit Exchange, Sunkist. It was actually remodeled in 1918 by Stan Wilson, again famous for the Mission Inn. At one point, this was also an opera house that had famous people like Fanny Brice and W.C. Fields, but again, it's just known as the Loring today. You can kind of see it right above the address carved in the stone, but this was just his winter home, Charles Loring. At one point, it was also the first city hall and jail for the city of Riverside. Pretty cool. Now it has a bank and some various shops. Riverside Fox Theater. Now this theater, as you can tell or see, is the Spanish colonial style. It was built in 1929. Back then they did movies as well as vaudeville. The one interesting thing about this movie theater was this was the very first public screening for Gone with the Wind. So here's the original ticket booth for the Fox Theater. To kind of give you an idea of, I'm sure it's very pretty when all the lights and stuff are on. Buy your ticket and head on into the movies. Right over here at 3855, this is the Riverside Finance Company. Obviously that's Spanish Baroque style. The architect was a cat named Styles Oliver Clement. It was built in 1926. Riverside Community College actually preserved the building, and now it's the District Center for Social Justice and Civil Liberties, as you can see. But first built in 1926, so that building's coming up on 100 years. So right next to the Center for Social Justice is White Park. Now White Park was established in 1883, and it was actually deeded to the city in 1889. And the only real facts I could find on it is it notes Victorian philosophy. I gotta be honest, I don't know what the hell that means, but it's basically just a city park, a place you can take a load off. The Anza Hotel, now known as the Santa Cruz Inn, it was first built in 1927, and you can see from here it's Spanish colonial, and the architect was actually a Stan Winston, again famous for the Mission Inn. As soon as the light changes here, we'll go get across the street. So we've crossed the street, we're getting a little closer here. Just an old inn. 1929. So this is the Harada House. I told you folks earlier that that restaurant was run by the Harada family. Well, this house was built in 1915, and I'm going to butcher his name, his first name, but I believe it's Husichi Harada, was able to buy the house using the names of his children who were born in this country, but because of California's 1913 alien law prohibiting folks from who weren't citizens from buying property, he wasn't able to. In 1916, the house was actually converted to 2 stories, but when the United States entered World War II, the Harada family was scooped up and sent to an internment camp, unfortunately, where both Mr. Harada and Mrs. Harada died. But the Harada house. So I've crossed the street. Here's the sun's probably a little bright, but you can see they're working to restore the Harada house. But if you're down in Riverside, it's worth a trip to at least walk by. So off in the distance, you can see a shot of the Mission Inn, but I'm just walking down the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, 3606 Lemon Street. This was built in 1901. See the beautiful bell tower. The architect was actually Arthur Benton. You've all heard his name several times. Go across the street. This is obviously Mission Revival, and it's actually considered one of the finest examples of Mission Revival in all of Southern California. Fine example. It is very pretty. Stained glass windows there. And a later addition, the reading room. I don't know when that was built. The original church, 120 years. Well, that was my walking tour of historic downtown Riverside, County of Riverside, Southern California. Certainly was a brief visit to some incredible buildings. I hope at a minimum I piqued your interest on one or two, and you'll journey into the heart of the Inland Empire, the IE, and create your own adventure and learn some more about those magnificent buildings. Anyway, in this world, when you could be anything you want, you be kind, you be humble, you be forgiving, and you be melting snow. Take care.